Tempest in Teyvat, Rimuru's Elemental Odyssey by KabirSingh808. Rimuru stood in the clearing, his stance calm but ready, as the pillars of stone he had summoned moments earlier cast long shadows around him. He narrowed his eyes as Shao landed across from him, his spear at the ready, dark energy swirling around the Adeptus. "Well, then," Rimuru said, a confident grin tugging at his lips. "Let's settle this score once and for all." Shao's golden eyes flashed, his grip on the spear tightening as he stepped forward, his movements smooth yet brimming with power. "You've got some guts showing up again," he growled, his voice cold and unyielding. "But it doesn't matter. Even if you hadn't come to face me, I would have found you." The tension between the two hung in the air like a storm about to break. The wind rustled through the trees, but the clearing remained deathly still, both warriors locking eyes, waiting for the other to make the first move. Rimuru chuckled lightly, unfazed by Shao's threat. "You think I'm afraid of you? I just wanted to make sure I was at my best this time." And now, he shifted his stance, the ground rumbling slightly beneath him, a faint glow emanating from his core. "I'm not holding back." Without warning, Shao lunged forward, his spear gleaming in the dim light as he aimed directly at Rimuru's chest. The Adeptus moved with blinding speed, a blur of green and gold, but Rimuru was ready. He raised his hand, calling forth the Geo element, and a stone shield burst from the ground between them. Shao's spear collided with the shield, sending cracks through the stone, but it held firm, blocking the strike. Rimuru didn't waste a second. As the shield absorbed the impact, he flicked his wrist, and sharp gusts of wind erupted from the air around him, aimed at Shao to force him back. Shao leapt into the air, twisting mid-flight to avoid the attack, but Rimuru was already a step ahead. "Not so fast," Rimuru muttered, forming a second clone beside him. The clone shot forward, mirroring Rimuru's movements perfectly as it charged at Shao from the left. Shao snarled, sensing the presence of the clone. He spun mid-air and hurled a blast of Adeptus energy toward it, aiming to disintegrate it instantly. But the clone wasn't so easily destroyed, it darted out of the way, dodging the attack with the same speed and agility as Rimuru. As Shao descended, his spear glowing with ethereal light, Rimuru's real body launched upward with incredible force, his fist glowing with geo energy. The ground trembled as the two clashed mid-air, spear against fist, earth against spirit. A shockwave of energy exploded from the impact, scattering debris and leaves in all directions. "You've gotten stronger," Shao admitted through gritted teeth as their weapons clashed, sparks flying between them. "And I'm not even done yet," Rimuru replied with a smirk. With a flick of his wrist, another geo pillar erupted from the ground, aimed at catching Shao off guard. Shao barely had time to react. The pillar grazed his side, forcing him to disengage and flip backward, landing lightly on his feet a few meters away. His eyes narrowed, focusing intently on Rimuru, realizing now that this battle wouldn't be as easy as before. "You're still a demon," Shao spat, his voice filled with disdain. "But I will purge you, no matter how much power you think you have." Rimuru tilted his head, chuckling softly. "A demon, huh? You really don't get it. I'm not bound by such simple labels." His expression darkened slightly. "But if you insist on this fight, I'll make sure you understand what you're truly facing." Shao flicked his hand in front of his face, and with a sudden burst of energy, a mask materialized, covering his features. It glowed faintly, radiating with raw, dangerous power. Rimuru narrowed his eyes, instantly on guard as he could feel the change in Shao's aura. "What's that mask?" Rimuru muttered to himself before speaking internally to Seal. "Seal, analyze it. I need to know what I'm dealing with." Seal's voice responded swiftly. "Analyzing. It appears that this mask is allowing Shao to enhance his combat abilities drastically. His speed and strength have increased beyond their previous levels." Rimuru barely had time to react as Shao lunged at him with incredible speed. The Adeptus closed the distance in a blink, his spear aimed directly at Rimuru's heart. Rimuru dodged just in time, the tip of the spear grazing his side as he spun away, a look of surprise crossing his face. "What just happened?" Rimuru asked, his thoughts racing as he kept his distance from Shao's next strike. "He's way faster than before." "Seal, what's going on?" Seal's tone was calm yet serious. "Shao is using a unique kind of energy, condensed within his body. It's enhancing his combat capabilities, but I cannot identify exactly what this energy is." What I can tell is that it's taking a toll on his body. The more he uses it, the more strain he places on himself. Rimuru nodded internally, understanding the situation. He was pushing his limits, using power that was dangerous even to himself. But that didn't make him any less deadly in the short term. What's the best way to defeat him now? Rimuru asked, his mind calculating possibilities. With your current capabilities, he will outmatch you before he wears himself out, Seal responded, her voice analytical. You have two options, either defeat him as quickly as possible or let him exhaust his energy. However, the second option is riskier, as his attacks will become increasingly dangerous the longer this fight drags on. Rimuru grinned, feeling a glimmer of excitement. And how do we make sure I win before he wears me out? Ciel's voice became more focused. I have been developing a strategy based on your new abilities from the Geo statue of the Seven. This will allow you to outmaneuver him. As Ciel explained the plan in his mind, Rimuru's grin widened, his confidence returning. How many clones will I need? 2 will suffice, Ciel replied. Position them strategically to keep Xiao guessing. This will give you the advantage. Without wasting a second, Rimuru dissipated all his current clones with a flick of his hand, except for the one with ether, and summoned 2 new clones beside him. Xiao's eyes narrowed as Rimuru summoned 2 clones beside him, his mind racing to interpret this new development. He had expected Rimuru to either attack immediately with his clones or attempt the same diversion tactics he had used in their previous encounter. Xiao readied himself to counter whatever tricks Rimuru might have up his sleeve. But then, something entirely unexpected happened. One of Rimuru's clones sat down calmly on the ground, crossing its legs in a meditative pose. The second clone mirrored it, assuming the same tranquil position. A strange energy began to build around them, and Xiao's sharp eyes quickly detected the elemental currents swirling in the air. The clones weren't preparing for an attack, they were absorbing elemental energy from the surroundings, pulling in the power of Geo and Anemo from the very landscape of Liu and sending it straight into Rimuru's real body. A wave of shock rippled through Xiao's normally stoic expression, though it was hidden behind his mask. This was something new, something beyond the tricks he had expected from Rimuru. His opponent wasn't merely fighting, he was recharging, growing stronger with each passing second. Xiao could see the elemental energy flowing into Rimuru, making him more powerful by the moment. If he didn't act soon, Rimuru's strength would outmatch even his enhanced state. I won't let you do this. Xiao growled, his spear igniting with adeptal energy. Without hesitation, he launched himself forward at lightning speed, his body becoming a blur of motion. The ground cracked beneath his feet as he shot toward the nearest clone, spear aimed to destroy it before it could funnel any more power to Rimuru. But Rimuru was ready. Just as Xiao's spear sliced through the air, aiming directly at the head of the meditating clone, Rimuru moved with impossible speed. He darted in front of the clone and reached out with his hand, catching Xiao's spear in midair, stopping the lethal strike mere inches from its target. The sheer force of Xiao's attack caused the air to ripple, but Rimuru's grip remained firm, holding the weapon in place as if it were nothing. Not so fast, Rimuru said, his voice cool and calm. His confident smile widened as his eyes met Xiao's from beneath the demon mask. For a split second, Xiao's eyes widened behind his mask, surprised that Rimuru could intercept his attack so effortlessly. He tried to pull back, to regroup for another strike, but it was too late. Rimuru's right leg moved quickly, delivering a powerful blow to Xiao's midsection. The impact of Rimuru's kick was immense. Xiao felt the air leave his lungs as the force sent him flying backward, crashing through the trees with a tremendous impact. The trees splintered and cracked as Xiao's body smashed through them, sending debris flying in all directions before he finally skidded to a halt, several meters away, among the broken trunks and shattered branches. For a moment, there was silence. Xiao, still dazed from the powerful blow, coughed as he struggled to rise to his feet. He glanced down at his stomach, still reeling from the shock of the attack. Rimuru had not only blocked his full-powered strike, but had also managed to hit him with enough force to knock him back, a feat that not many could achieve against a vigilant yaksha. As Xiao stood, catching his breath, he wiped the dirt from his face and clenched his spear tighter, his mind racing to process what had just happened. He had fought countless battles, vanquished innumerable demons, but Rimuru was proving to be unlike any opponent he had faced before. Still want to go another round? Rimuru called out with a smirk, standing tall as elemental energy continued to flow into him. His clones, still in their meditative poses, continued to absorb the power of the Geo and Anemo elements from the surroundings, their calm composure contrasting with the chaotic battlefield. Xiao's gaze snapped to the clones, realizing the growing threat. He understood now, Rimuru wasn't merely stalling. He was charging, growing stronger with each passing second, using the environment around him to bolster his power. Xiao gritted his teeth behind his mask, the pressure of the situation mounting. "You think you can defeat me by gathering more power?" He spat, his voice laced with both anger and determination. "No matter how much energy you absorb, you're still just a demon." Rimuru chuckled, shaking his head. "You really need to let go of that whole demon thing. I'm much more than that." His eyes gleamed as the elemental energy around him shimmered, crackling with potential. The ground beneath him trembled, rippling with Geo power, while the air stirred with the currents of Anemo. It was clear now, Rimuru was no longer the same opponent he had been when the fight began. "And as for defeating you," Rimuru's smile widened as he took a step forward. "You're not the only one who can harness the strength of this world." Xiao, fueled by his growing frustration, let out a sharp breath as he lifted his spear again, dark adeptal energy swirling around him, charging his weapon with raw destructive power. The Yaksha's body was tense, his gaze locked on Rimuru, ready to attack again. But now, Xiao knew, this fight would be different from their earlier clash. Rimuru wasn't just keeping pace anymore. He was rapidly outgrowing the need to catch up. As Rimuru unsheathed his katana, the sharp metallic sound cut through the tension in the air. He held the blade before him, its edge gleaming with an eerie light as it reflected the surrounding energy. Taking a firm stance, Rimuru planted his feet on the ground, his body perfectly balanced as he prepared to test the limits of his new power. His eyes narrowed, focusing on Xiao. "Let's start with a little test," Rimuru thought to himself. In an instant, he vanished, his body a blur as he moved at a frightening speed, the air behind him rippling from the sheer force of his movement. With his katana raised high, Rimuru descended on Xiao with a powerful vertical strike, aiming to test the adeptus' reflexes. Xiao's sharp instincts kicked in at the last possible moment. His spear shot up, barely managing to intercept Rimuru's blade just in time. The impact was tremendous, the sheer force of Rimuru's strike causing the ground beneath Xiao's feet to crack and shatter, sending debris flying as the earth struggled to absorb the power of the blow. Xiao's legs buckled slightly, his knees sinking into the cracked earth as he felt the weight of Rimuru's attack pressing down on him. For a heartbeat, the two warriors were locked in place, their weapons grinding against each other, a contest of raw strength. Xiao's arm trembled as he pushed against the katana, beads of sweat forming on his brow beneath the mask. It took everything he had to hold off Rimuru's strike, and for a brief moment, he wondered just how much power Rimuru had drawn from the elemental energy around them. As Rimuru landed back on the ground with a soft thud, he observed Xiao carefully. His attack had been a test, and the result had confirmed what he already suspected: Xiao was nearing his limit. The Adeptus had barely managed to block the strike, and with each passing second, the toll of the unique energy Xiao was using was becoming more evident. His breathing was heavier, his movements not as fluid as before. Rimuru gripped his katana tightly, his eyes gleaming with calculated determination. He can't keep this up for much longer, he thought, knowing that Xiao's strength was finite and already being pushed to its limits. The constant release of his adeptal energy was wearing down his body, and soon, Xiao's attacks would become reckless, desperate. But Xiao wasn't done yet. With a fierce growl, the Adeptus took another fighting stance, his spear raised once more. His eyes locked on Rimuru with unwavering determination. Even though his energy was depleting, Xiao's will to fight was as strong as ever. With a sudden burst of speed, he lunged at Rimuru, his spear gleaming with dark energy as he aimed a powerful strike at his opponent. Rimuru reacted quickly, raising his katana to meet the incoming blow. The weapons clashed with a resounding impact, sparks flying from the collision. Rimuru's blade met Xiao's spear, the two locked in a fierce struggle of strength once again. But something was different this time. As Rimuru blocked the strike, he felt the weight behind Xiao's attack increase. His eyes widened slightly in surprise. He's stronger, Rimuru thought, sensing the growing intensity of Xiao's strikes. The force behind the spear was heavier than before, and the energy surging through it seemed more intense. Xiao was pushing through his own limits, drawing out every ounce of power he had left. Xiao's breathing was ragged, but his eyes blazed with determination. He was fighting not just with his body, but with his sheer willpower. Each attack he launched was fiercer than the last, as if he were pulling strength from the depths of his very soul. Rimuru, feeling the increased pressure behind Xiao's strike, grinned to himself. Impressive, he thought. Even at his limit, he's still managing to grow stronger. But Rimuru knew that this kind of power couldn't last long. Xiao was burning through his reserves, and once they were gone, there would be nothing left to fuel his rage-driven strikes. As their weapons clashed once more, Rimuru planted his feet firmly and parried Xiao's attack, pushing the Adeptus back a few steps. The ground cracked beneath Xiao's feet again as he staggered, barely managing to keep his balance. He was running out of steam, but his spirit remained unbroken. Let's see how long you can keep this up, Rimuru thought as he prepared for Xiao's next move, his katana glowing faintly as it absorbed the elemental energy still swirling around them. As Rimuru and Xiao traded blows at blinding speed, the air between them crackled with energy. Each strike resounded like thunder, their weapons clashing with a force that sent shockwaves through the surrounding trees. Rimuru's strength was growing steadily, the elemental energy from his clones continuously flowing into him, amplifying his power with every passing second. But something troubled him. Xiao's strength was also increasing with each strike, and despite Rimuru's growing advantage, the Adeptus wasn't weakening as expected. What's going on with him? Rimuru wondered, as he blocked another powerful blow from Xiao's spear. The impact shook his arm, but instead of faltering, Xiao seemed to grow even fiercer. His strikes came faster, stronger, and more desperate. Just then, Ciel's voice resonated in Rimuru's mind, her tone calm but urgent. He is pushing beyond his limits, she explained. He's drawing on every last ounce of his strength, but it's taking a huge toll on his body. If this continues, it could cause irreversible damage to him. Rimuru's eyes narrowed as the gravity of the situation sank in. If Xiao kept forcing himself like this, he would self-destruct. His body couldn't handle this much strain for long. Rimuru knew he had to end the fight soon, before Xiao did irreversible harm to himself. I see. I can't let this drag on any longer. With a decisive nod, Rimuru began preparing for the final strike. He had a plan, and this time, there would be no mistakes. Another clone appeared behind him, immediately dropping into a meditative pose, gathering more elemental energy from the surroundings. Rimuru started to channel that energy, focusing it into his right fist, which began to glow faintly as the power surged into it. He was gathering every bit of energy for one decisive strike. Xiao, still relentless in his assault, lunged forward again. His spear slashed through the air in a deadly horizontal arc aimed at Rimuru's midsection. Rimuru's reflexes were sharp, his mind clear. As the spear came at him, he ducked under it, the wind from the weapon whipping through his hair. In a fluid motion, Rimuru's katana shot up, its blade aimed directly at Xiao's spear. The moment steel met steel, the force of Rimuru's strike disarmed Xiao. His spear flew out of his grip, spinning wildly through the air before crashing into the forest far behind them. Xiao's eyes widened, surprise momentarily flashing across his face as he realized his weapon was gone. For a split second, Xiao's focus wavered. His eyes darted to where his spear had landed, panic flickering in his gaze. He almost forgot about Rimuru in that brief moment of distraction. But by the time he turned back to face his opponent, it was already too late. Rimuru was ready. Standing tall, his right fist was glowing with immense power, the energy gathered in it pulsating with the force of the earth itself. The air around Rimuru shimmered, crackling with the combined energy of his clones and the environment. He had gathered as much elemental energy as he could into this one attack, and now it was time to strike. In a flash, Rimuru leapt into the air, his body twisting as he channeled all of his power into his right hand. Xiao barely had time to react. His eyes widened as he saw Rimuru coming at him, the fist glowing with deadly energy. But he had no time to dodge, no time to defend. Rimuru's fist connected with Xiao's face with devastating force, the impact reverberating through the entire battlefield. The sheer power of the punch created a shockwave, and as Rimuru's blow landed, the ground beneath Xiao cracked and gave way, forming a crater beneath his feet. The force of the punch sent Xiao hurtling backward, his body crashing into the ground as debris and dust flew into the air from the massive impact. For a moment, everything was still. The only sound was the faint hum of energy dissipating from Rimuru's fist as the dust began to settle. Xiao lay motionless at the center of the crater, his body bruised and battered from the immense force of the blow. Rimuru landed lightly on the edge of the crater, his breathing steady but his eyes sharp, waiting to see if Xiao would rise again. As the dust cleared, Rimuru stood there, katana in hand, ready for whatever might come next. The fight wasn't over just yet, but Rimuru knew that with this strike, he had delivered a devastating blow. It was now up to Xiao whether he could recover or if this was the end of their battle. Rimuru's clones remained at his side, continuing to draw energy from the environment, ready to support him if necessary. But for now, the battlefield was eerily silent, the calm after the storm of their intense battle. As Rimuru made his way to the spot where his punch had sent Xiao flying, he felt the tension in the air begin to dissipate. The trees around them were still, the ground beneath his feet cratered from the sheer force of the clash between the two. The silence of the aftermath was almost deafening, a stark contrast to the brutal speed and power they had exchanged just moments ago. He found Xiao collapsed on the ground, still trying to push himself up, his limbs trembling. The Adeptus was clearly spent, the physical toll of using his mask far greater than even he had anticipated. Xiao's body wavered, refusing to obey his will any longer, and he fell back to the ground, breathing heavily. His mask, the source of his enhanced power, had disintegrated, leaving his face exposed and his energy rapidly draining. Rimuru slowed his steps as he approached, his katana held loosely at his side, no longer a threat. He looked down at Xiao, not with malice or arrogance, but with a sense of understanding. Xiao had pushed himself far beyond his limits, and it had nearly destroyed him. Despite his weakened state, Xiao's pride remained unshaken. He glared up at Rimuru, his breath labored but his spirit unbroken. His voice was sharp, cutting through the stillness. "What are you waiting for, demon? Finish it." Rimuru let out a soft sigh, shaking his head as he sheathed his katana. "I'm not a demon," he replied, his voice even. Though he felt some weariness from the battle, he remained composed. "I know what my essence feels like to you, like a demon, or something far worse. But I'm not what you think I am." Xiao's eyes narrowed, suspicion still burning in his gaze. His body trembled as he forced himself to sit up slightly, still defiant despite his condition. "And why should I believe you?" he demanded, struggling to keep his composure. His distrust was palpable, but so was his exhaustion. Rimuru turned his back to Xiao, looking out over the forest, the wind rustling through the trees. He was silent for a moment, his thoughts calm but focused. Then, he spoke, his voice carrying a note of finality. "You don't have to believe me. You can think whatever you want." His tone was firm but not harsh, as if trying to drive a point home without causing harm. He looked back over his shoulder, meeting Xiao's gaze. "But here I am, leaving you alive. You're vulnerable, on the ground, without your mask. If I were truly a demon, do you think I'd let you live right now?" The question hung in the air like a weight. Xiao's breath hitched as he processed Rimuru's words, the reality of the situation sinking in. Rimuru had the perfect opportunity to end him, yet here he was, standing down. The tension in Xiao's body began to ease, though the distrust in his eyes didn't fade entirely. Still, he couldn't deny the truth of Rimuru's actions. Even as a warrior honed by centuries of battle, Xiao could recognize mercy when it was offered. But it wasn't just mercy, it was understanding. Rimuru was different from anything Xiao had fought before. "Rest well," Rimuru said softly, his voice more gentle now. "You've been pushing yourself too hard, even beyond your limits. It's time to stop." His words were sincere, carrying no mockery or judgment, just concern for someone who had fought too long and too hard. As Rimuru finished speaking, his clones, who had been meditating nearby to channel elemental energy, crumbled into dust, their purpose fulfilled. The lingering energy around them faded, returning to the forest. Rimuru glanced at the crumbling dust with a calm expression, already prepared to leave. With a final glance at Xiao, Rimuru nodded to himself, his work here complete. He closed his eyes for a moment, and without hesitation, transferred his consciousness back to the clone he had left behind with Ether and Paimon. The world shifted around Rimuru as he returned to the safety of the clone in Liu. The bustling city's noise gradually replaced the stillness of the forest, but he didn't relax just yet. He knew Ether and Paimon had fled ahead, heading toward Liu as planned. They were likely already far ahead by now. Rimuru allowed himself a brief moment of relief, glad that the two were safe for the time being. As his consciousness settled back into the clone, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. Xiao had been a formidable opponent, but the battle was behind them now. Rimuru could only hope that the Adeptus would understand the truth in time. As Rimuru's clone walked alongside Ether and Paimon, the group nearing the bustling city of Liu, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. The sudden halt caused Paimon to flit around in confusion. She floated up close to the clone's face, tilting her head. "Huh, what's the matter? Why'd you stop all of a sudden?" Paimon asked, her voice filled with curiosity. The clone slowly opened its eyes, a faint glimmer of recognition shining within. A slight grin spread across its face as Rimuru's real consciousness had returned to it. "Well, did you run into any trouble on the way here?" Rimuru's voice, calm and familiar, caught Ether and Paimon off guard. Ether, who had been watching carefully, immediately narrowed his eyes. "Wait, are you the real Rimuru now?" he asked. Rimuru nodded, the carefree grin still on his face. "Yeah, I am. Sorry for the delay. Had a bit of business to take care of." Both Ether and Paimon let out a collective sigh of relief, the tension from earlier slowly fading away. Paimon, though, couldn't contain her emotions and quickly floated right in front of Rimuru's face. "Do you know how worried we were?" She started shouting, her tiny fists flailing in the air. "You took forever, and we had no idea if you were okay or not." And Ether was all stressed too, thinking that Xiao Gai might show up again. Rimuru smiled at Paimon's outburst, but he glanced back at Ether, more curious. "Glad you're all right. So, where are we headed now?" Paimon, still visibly frustrated but calming down, crossed her arms and huffed. "We're heading to Yujing Terrace. The locals told us that's where the rite of dissension is gonna happen." Rimuru nodded, his sharp senses scanning the area around him for any lingering threats. "Yujing Terrace, huh? Sounds like an important place. Well then, what are we waiting for? Let's get moving." The group started walking again, moving deeper into the vibrant city of Liu. The streets were alive with people and the distinct sounds of merchants selling their wares. The air was filled with the sense of Liu's delicacies as they made their way toward the heart of the city. But Ether, ever curious, couldn't help but ask. "So, how did things go on your end?" Ether asked, his eyes flickering with interest. Rimuru chuckled, stretching his arms as he walked. "It went well. Not without a few challenges, though." As they continued through the streets, Rimuru began to explain his fight with Xiao. "The guy is tough. Way tougher than I expected. He's fast, his strength is no joke, and that mask of his. It gave him an insane boost in power." Ether listened intently, nodding as he imagined how difficult the fight must have been. "So, how did you manage?" "I somehow figured it out. He was pushing himself beyond his limits, using some kind of energy that increased his speed and strength. But, as I already sensed that it was taking a toll on him, I had to take him down before he wore himself out completely." Paimon's eyes widened, floating closer to Rimuru. "So, you actually beat him? Wow. But wait, where is he now? Did you?" Rimuru shook his head with a smile. No, I didn't kill him. I left him there, unconscious but alive. He was pushing himself so hard that even after I landed the final blow, I knew he didn't need to be taken down any further." "So you didn't finish him off?" Ether asked, sounding surprised. "Nope. I told him I'm not a demon, and leaving him there is proof of that. I think he'll come around eventually," Rimuru said confidently, remembering the look in Xiao's eyes when he left him behind. Paimon floated beside Ether, still processing Rimuru's explanation. "Well, it's good you didn't kill him. He was just confused. Besides, we've got more important things to focus on now, like getting to Yujing Terrace in time for the rite of dissension." Rimuru nodded, his grin returning as they neared their destination. The towering peaks of Yujing Terrace loomed in the distance, the excitement of the day ahead buzzing in the air. As the group made their way toward Yujing Terrace, a sense of unease settled over Rimuru. His instincts flared, alerting him that they were being watched. He glanced around casually, taking in the bustling streets and vibrant stalls selling a variety of goods, but his sharp senses caught sight of a few figures lingering in the shadows. Every time he looked directly at them, the figures would abruptly shift, pretending to engage in mundane activities, bartering over vegetables, haggling for trinkets, or chatting amongst themselves. Their movements were too synchronized, too deliberate for a bustling marketplace. Rimuru's gaze sharpened as he focused on the hidden watchers. They're definitely keeping tabs on us, he thought, frowning slightly. Almost anyone else would have missed them completely, but not me. Despite their attempts at subtlety, he could see through their charade. They were well trained, likely skilled at blending into the crowd, but Rimuru was no ordinary observer. The tension in the air felt palpable, but he didn't sense any hostility emanating from them. Instead, it felt more like curiosity or perhaps caution. Rimuru decided to let it slide for now. There were more pressing matters at hand, such as getting to the rite of dissension and ensuring Ether and Paimon were safe. No need to start a scene over curious onlookers, he reasoned internally. However, he kept a close eye on the figures, adjusting his stance slightly as he continued walking. His senses were on high alert, ready to react should the situation change. He couldn't shake the feeling that the watchers were connected to something larger at play in Liu, but for now, he'd bide his time and see how things unfolded. Paimon, unaware of the tension building beneath the surface, flew ahead, chattering excitedly about the various shops they passed. Look at that. They're selling those beautiful lanterns. We should get one for the festival, she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Ether turned to Rimuru, sensing a shift in his demeanor. Are you okay? You seem a bit distracted, he asked, concern etched on his face. Yeah, just keeping an eye on our surroundings, Rimuru replied, maintaining his casual tone. Nothing to worry about, but I'd suggest staying alert. The trio continued down the street, Rimuru's senses attuned to the world around them while also listening to Paimon's excited chatter and Ether's inquiries about their journey. As they approached Yujing Terrace, the watchers faded back into the crowd, but Rimuru knew they hadn't left, he could still feel their presence lurking just beyond sight. Whatever they want, I'll be ready, he thought, determination igniting within him. For now, let's focus on the rite of dissension and what lies ahead. As they entered Yujing Terrace, the atmosphere shifted. A huge crowd had gathered in the center, all eyes fixed on a grand platform adorned with vibrant banners and colorful decorations. Excitement buzzed in the air, thick with anticipation for whatever was about to unfold. Paimon's eyes lit up as she scanned the scene. Look over there, she exclaimed, pointing to two large incense burners at either side of the terrace. People were placing incense sticks and offering quiet prayers, their faces reflecting hope and devotion. This is the perfect time to make a wish. We should definitely do it. Rimuru exchanged glances with Ether, both of them nodding in agreement. Let's go, he said, leading the way toward the incense burners. As they approached, the sense of the burning incense filled the air, earthy and sweet, mingling with the excited chatter of the crowd. Once they reached the burner, they each took a stick of incense and placed it into the flame, watching as it flickered and danced. Rimuru closed his eyes, centering himself as he offered his silent wish. I wish for all my friends' dreams to come true, he thought earnestly, feeling the warmth of his resolve flow through him. After a moment, he opened his eyes and looked over at Ether and Paimon. They had also completed their wishes, the flickering light of the incense reflecting in their eyes. Paimon turned to Rimuru with an eager grin. So, what did you wish for? She prodded, her curiosity bubbling over. Rimuru chuckled, a playful glint in his eyes. It's a secret, he replied, enjoying the playful banter. Paimon pouted, crossing her arms. That's not fair. You have to tell me. Ether, sensing the growing tension, smiled gently. What about you, Paimon? What did you wish for? I'm not telling either, she declared defiantly, sticking her tongue out at them both. With a sigh, Rimuru turned to Ether. And what about you? What did you wish for? He asked, genuinely curious. Ether's expression grew serious for a moment, reflecting the weight of his thoughts. I wished to reunite with my sister, he said softly, the longing clear in his voice. Rimuru nodded, understanding the depth of Ether's wish. That's a good one. I hope you get to see her soon, he encouraged, feeling a sense of camaraderie strengthen between them. Paimon bounced with excitement. Okay, now we're all set. But Rimuru, you still didn't tell us your wish. Rimuru laughed softly, amused by her antics. Okay, let's keep our secrets then. But we should get ready, the rite of dissension might start at any moment. The trio made their way back through the crowd, the vibrant atmosphere pulsing with excitement. As they walked, Rimuru felt a sense of anticipation building within him. Whatever the rite of dissension held, he was ready to face it alongside his friends. They were united, and with their wishes sent out into the universe, he felt a warmth of hope blossoming in his heart. As Rimuru, Ether, and Paimon made their way to the front of the crowd, the energy in the air became more intense. People were gathering to witness something monumental, and Rimuru's sharp senses could feel the anticipation building. From his vantage point, Rimuru's eyes focused on a figure standing at the center of the grand platform. It was a woman, her regal presence unmistakable even among the ornate decorations and ceremonial atmosphere. She was dressed in traditional Liu clothing, her elegant robes flowing around her like liquid gold, adorned with intricate designs that mirrored the grandeur of Liu itself. Her hair was styled meticulously, every strand in place, radiating an aura of both power and grace. As Rimuru watched the scene unfold, something unexpected happened. The woman's gaze shifted, and though subtle, she glanced toward Rimuru's group from the corner of her eye. It was brief, so fleeting that most would have missed it, but Rimuru noticed immediately. The look wasn't one of hostility, but it was enough to catch his attention. Seal, Rimuru thought silently, who is she? Seal responded almost instantly, her calm voice resonating in his mind. She is Ningguang, the Tianquan of the Liu Kixing. A powerful and influential figure in Liu. She oversees much of the region's commerce and politics. Rimuru's eyes narrowed slightly as he processed this information. Ningguang, he mused internally, glancing back at her. There was something about her presence, the way she held herself, that told him she was more than just a figurehead. Ningguang radiated power, not just political influence, but something deeper, a wisdom and strength that came with great responsibility. Ether and Paimon were too engrossed in the ceremony to notice Ningguang's subtle glance, but Rimuru remained alert. He didn't sense any immediate danger, but he knew better than to take things lightly when dealing with someone of her stature. Well, this just got more interesting, Rimuru thought to himself, his gaze shifting back to the ceremony. With Ningguang now in the picture, he couldn't help but feel that their time in Liu was about to become even more complicated. As Rimuru, Ether, and Paimon stood among the crowd, the anticipation for the rite of dissension reached its peak. The gentle murmur of the people slowly died down, and all eyes were drawn to the central platform where Ningguang stood, poised and graceful. The air was thick with reverence, and even Paimon, who was usually buzzing with energy, remained unusually quiet. Ningguang, with her commanding presence, gave a slight nod to the two helpers who had escorted her to the ceremonial stage. The pair, dressed in formal attire, immediately bowed low in respect before stepping aside, creating an open space for Ningguang to begin the ceremony. The hour is upon us, Ningguang declared, her voice calm but carrying the weight of authority. It echoed across the terrace, instantly drawing everyone's attention. Her tone carried both tradition and the sacredness of the event. As she spoke, the atmosphere shifted. The wind seemed to still, and the already quiet crowd fell into a deeper silence, the only sound being the faint rustling of robes and the quiet clinking of ceremonial items. There was an air of reverence that surrounded the ceremony, and Rimuru could feel the deep connection the people had to this event. Ningguang stepped forward, her every movement precise and deliberate, like a dance of grace and control. With a gentle wave of her hand, the ceremonial items, incense burners, ornate vessels, and other symbols of Liu's long history, were arranged by her attendants in perfect symmetry. The smell of burning incense filled the air, adding a mystical quality to the scene. The light of the setting sun bathed the terrace in a warm, golden glow, casting long shadows that danced with the movement of the people. Rimuru kept his gaze fixed on Ningguang, still aware of the subtle power she exuded. Even now, she had an air of complete control, not only of the ceremony but of the crowd's attention. He couldn't shake the feeling that Ningguang was observing everything, including him, with a sharp and calculating mind. As the crowd waited in silent expectation, Ningguang raised her hand once more, signaling the beginning of the rite of dissension. Rimuru glanced toward Ether and Paimon, who were watching the ceremony intently. Paimon, with her wide eyes, was captivated by the scene, while Ether remained calm but focused, clearly trying to absorb everything. Rimuru, however, was still processing the subtle glances and the tension he felt from those watching them earlier on the streets. Even though the ceremony was now the center of attention, he couldn't fully shake the sense of being observed. I should stay alert, Rimuru thought, keeping his senses sharp, just in case something happens. But for now, his focus returned to Ningguang as she continued to conduct the opening rituals of the ceremony. As the ceremony of the rite of dissension commenced, a profound shift began to take place in the sky above the Yujing Terrace. The once clear sky darkened, and ominous clouds gathered, swirling with an unnatural energy directly above the ceremonial platform. The crowd looked up in awe and confusion as the winds picked up, and a faint hum echoed through the air. Ningguang, poised and collected, didn't falter, but Rimuru could feel the tension around him rise. The swirling clouds moved faster, forming a vortex right above the terrace, and suddenly, a beam of light shot up from the ceremonial tools, piercing the center of the storm. The crowd gasped in unison as the light illuminated the entire area, and the atmosphere became thick with an otherworldly power. Rimuru's senses immediately flared. Something was off, terribly off. He felt the air shift as the sky turned a strange brownish hue, like a storm of dust and power brewing in the heavens. His eyes scanned the sky, and before he could react, something massive fell from the swirling clouds, crashing directly onto the platform where the ceremonial items were laid. The impact sent a shockwave through the terrace, and people screamed, stumbling backward in fear and panic. But before any real harm could befall the crowd, Rimuru reacted instinctively. He raised his hand, summoning a barrier of wind, powerful yet gentle enough to shield the onlookers from the force of the impact. The barrier held, dispersing the debris and protecting the people from harm. The crowd, though shaken, was safe behind Rimuru's barrier. Ether and Paimon exchanged shocked glances but remained silent, their eyes drawn to the center of the terrace where the thing had landed. As the dust began to settle, Rimuru lowered his wind shield and shifted his gaze to the center of the platform. There, lying amidst the scattered ceremonial tools, was a massive dragon, its immense body sprawled lifelessly on the ground. Its scales were a dull golden color, once majestic but now dim and faded, as if drained of all life. The dragon lay perfectly still, its wings spread out awkwardly, and its eyes closed as though in eternal slumber. The crowd, once filled with awe, was now frozen in shock. A deathly silence fell over the terrace as all eyes fixed on the dragon. Rimuru's heart skipped a beat as he analyzed the situation. A dragon. But, is it dead? He cautiously stepped forward, his sharp senses on high alert. The energy he sensed from the dragon was faint, barely a flicker of life, if any. Seal confirmed his suspicions, quickly scanning the creature. It's a powerful entity, but its life force is weak. Almost non-existent, Seal informed him, her voice steady. As Rimuru stared at the seemingly lifeless dragon, he couldn't shake the feeling that something more was happening here, something deeper than just a dragon falling from the sky. The ceremony, the swirling clouds, the sudden appearance of this creature. It couldn't just be a coincidence. Ningguang, standing near the platform, kept her composure but was clearly shaken by the unexpected turn of events. The crowd began murmuring, unsure whether to be terrified or amazed. What is going on? Rimuru thought, his grip tightening on his katana as he kept his guard up. He couldn't afford to let his attention slip. This wasn't just some random event, it felt like something far greater was at play. As Rimuru stared at the lifeless form of the dragon, his instincts screamed that something was wrong. He couldn't believe that this massive creature was the true Geo-Archon, Rex Lapis. He asked Seal to run a deeper analysis on the dragon. While he waited, Ningguang was already by the dragon's side, examining the situation with her sharp gaze. After a brief inspection, she stood tall, her voice carrying across the terrace. The Geo-Archon, Rex Lapis, has been killed, she declared, her tone grave. The crowd gasped in horror and confusion, whispers spreading like wildfire. Immediately, she ordered the guards and the Millilith soldiers surrounding the area to seal the exits. Panic spread through the gathered crowd, who had come to witness a divine ceremony, not a tragedy. Rimuru, still processing Ningguang's words, received Ciel's report. This dragon's body, it's merely a vessel. I don't believe this is the real Geo-Archon. Ciel's words echoed in Rimuru's mind, making him tense up. A vessel. Why would a god fake their own death? Rimuru thought, stunned by the revelation. Something far bigger than them was in motion, and it involved more than just a simple murder. He glanced toward Ether, who was already on edge, his body language suggesting that he was ready to bolt. But before Ether could act, Rimuru placed a hand on his shoulder, holding him back. "Don't run," Rimuru said quietly. "If we flee now, it'll only cause more trouble. We haven't done anything wrong, so there's no need to worry, yet." Ether hesitated, but Rimuru's calm demeanor kept him from panicking. However, as Rimuru scanned the area, he noticed something unsettling. Ningguang was speaking in low tones with a few Millilith soldiers. Their gaze repeatedly flicked toward Rimuru's group, and within moments, the soldiers broke away from her and started running toward them. Rimuru's eyes narrowed. Why are they coming for us? Could she have set this whole thing up? Did she fake the god's death to frame us? His suspicions deepened, especially when one of the Millilith shouted, "Arrest them." The tension snapped. Rimuru knew there was no time to stand still any longer. "So much for not running," he muttered. Without hesitation, he grabbed Ether and Paimon by their hands. "Move." The three of them bolted toward the nearest exit, but more Millilith soldiers were already converging on their position, blocking off escape routes and surrounding the terrace. The crowds were in disarray, making it hard to weave through, and the soldiers were yelling for everyone to stand back, focusing their pursuit on Rimuru's group. As they ran, Rimuru's mind raced. Why us? What is Ningguang's game here? With every passing moment, the Millilith were closing in, their shouts echoing across the terrace. Rimuru could hear the soldiers barking orders to corner them, but they hadn't drawn their weapons yet. That only made him more suspicious. If they really thought we were responsible, why haven't they attacked yet? Ether, struggling to keep up, asked, "Why are they after us?" "We didn't do anything." "I don't know yet," Rimuru responded, glancing back at the advancing guards. "But something's definitely wrong, and we're not sticking around to find out." As Rimuru, Ether, and Paimon bolted towards the stairs, they quickly realized that their way out was blocked. A fresh wave of Millilith soldiers emerged from below, climbing the stairs with purpose, forming an unbreakable barrier. Their steel armor glinted under the terrace lights, and their eyes were locked onto Rimuru's group. Ether glanced around, looking for any way to escape, but every route seemed sealed. The tension in the air thickened as Rimuru's mind raced, searching for a solution. Amidst the chaos, Rimuru heard the voice of one of the Millilith officers, the same one who had been speaking with Ningguang earlier. The officer was waving his arms, shouting with urgency, "Stop! Wait! Listen to us!" But Rimuru barely registered his words. His mind was calculating the next move, and every second they hesitated only gave their pursuers more time to close in. "We can't stay here any longer. There's no time to figure out their motives, escape comes first." With a swift motion, Rimuru made his decision. He firmly grabbed Ether's and Paimon's hands. Both looked at him in confusion for a brief moment before Paimon's eyes widened. In an instant, powerful wings, glowing with vibrant energy, unfurled from Rimuru's back. The wings were unlike anything the people of Liu had ever seen, large, radiant, shimmering with the elemental energies of both wind and earth. They stretched wide, casting a shadow over the nearby onlookers. The crowd gasped in utter disbelief. The Millilith, who were closing in, froze in their tracks, astonished at the sight before them. A few of the soldiers exchanged shocked glances, completely unprepared for what they were witnessing. Someone flying with wings, especially someone not known to be a vision user, was beyond their comprehension. Paimon, who had just barely processed what was happening, shrieked in surprise, "Are Rimuru? Are you serious?" Rimuru only gave a confident nod, his face calm as he prepared for what came next. Without further hesitation, he launched himself into the air, lifting both Ether and Paimon along with him. They soared upward in a single, smooth motion, rising high above the terrace. As they ascended, Ether's heart pounded in his chest. He had experienced many incredible things during his travels, but being suddenly lifted into the air by Rimuru, with wings no less, was unexpected even for him. Below, the crowd of onlookers gawked, pointing up at the sky in stunned awe. The soldiers, who had been so sure of their capture just moments ago, were now left staring helplessly as Rimuru flew further and further out of reach. Rimuru, on the other hand, remained focused. He could feel the wind against his face, the air currents responding to his control as he stabilized their flight. His senses were sharp, constantly scanning the surroundings for any sign of pursuit. Back on the terrace, Ningguang watched the entire scene unfold with a look of quiet contemplation. She had been expecting many things to happen during the rite of dissension, but this was far beyond any of her expectations. As Rimuru and his companions disappeared into the distance, her lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment, she stood in silence, her eyes following the trail of energy left in their wake. This is going to get much more complicated now, she murmured to herself, her tone a mixture of curiosity and concern. Ningguang turned to the nearest group of Millilith, her expression firm and resolute. Find them, she ordered. Tell them I want a formal meeting. The Millilith nodded and dispersed immediately, following Ningguang's orders with renewed urgency. They knew better than to question the Tianquan's authority, especially in a situation as unusual as this. As the soldiers spread out in search of Rimuru's group, Ningguang remained standing at the edge of the terrace, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon. Far away, Rimuru soared through the sky with Ether and Paimon in tow. The wind rustled against their clothes, and for a moment, there was a strange sense of peace amidst the chaos they had just fled. Ether finally spoke up, his voice a mix of astonishment and curiosity. Rimuru, are you sure this is the best way? Rimuru smiled, though he didn't take his eyes off their destination. It's the fastest way. We need to stay ahead of them until we understand what's really going on. Paimon, still holding tightly onto Ether, sighed in relief. At least we're safe for now, but what just happened back there? And why were they chasing us? Rimuru's eyes narrowed slightly as he thought back to the events of the rite of dissension. The sight of the dragon's body, the swirling clouds, Ningguang's reaction, it all felt like pieces of a puzzle that hadn't yet come together. I'm not sure yet, but something is off. I don't think Rex Lapis was truly killed there. We need to figure out what's really going on. As Rimuru, Ether, and Paimon landed on a grassy hill just outside of Liu Harbor, they finally took a moment to catch their breath. The moonlit landscape stretched before them, peaceful and quiet, in stark contrast to the tense and chaotic scene they had just fled. Sitting down on the soft grass, the group tried to make sense of what had happened at the terrace. Ether was the first to break the silence. Rimuru, he began, still catching his breath, you told me not to run, but then you were the first to bolt out of there. What changed? Rimuru, still alert as ever, leaned back slightly, his eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting something to happen at any moment. Ether, he said calmly, I didn't want to cause a scene, but the situation turned suspicious really fast. I wasn't planning on running, until I realized something important about that dragon corpse. He paused, letting his words sink in. Ether furrowed his brow. What do you mean? That dragon, that was Rex Lapis, wasn't it? Paimon, floating nearby, gasped. Yeah, everyone said that was Rex Lapis. So what do you mean by realizing something important? Rimuru's eyes narrowed as he thought back to what he had seen. That dragon's body was a fake, he said quietly but firmly. I analyzed it while we were still on the terrace. It wasn't the real Geo-Archon. It was some kind of vessel, a substitute. Both Ether and Paimon's eyes widened in shock. A fake, Ether repeated, incredulity in his voice. Rimuru nodded. The real Rex Lapis is still alive. I don't know why he'd fake his death like this, but something's not right about this whole situation. And, he paused, glancing towards Liu. I have a feeling Ningguang knows more than she's letting on. Paimon, now floating even closer, looked at Rimuru with a mixture of concern and disbelief. Wait, you're saying Ningguang knew it was fake? But why would she? Rimuru cut her off gently, but his tone was serious. While everyone was focused on the ceremony, I saw her talking to the Millilith, and immediately after that, the guards came for us. They didn't chase anyone else, just us. That can't be a coincidence. Ether folded his arms, thinking hard about Rimuru's words. So, you think Ningguang might have set this up to frame us? Rimuru shrugged slightly but kept his expression grave. It's possible. If she knew we were outsiders, she might be trying to pin the blame on us for whatever political reasons she has in mind. Or maybe she's trying to cover up the real reason for Rex Lapis' disappearance. Paimon gasped, her eyes wide with alarm. So you're saying we're being framed for something we didn't even do? Exactly, Rimuru replied, nodding. The group fell into an uneasy silence, digesting the weight of Rimuru's words. If they were being targeted for something they hadn't done, the situation was far worse than they had anticipated. They needed to be careful with every step from now on. Suddenly, Rimuru's senses flared. His sharp awareness picked up on a presence approaching fast. His eyes narrowed, his muscles tensing instinctively. "We're not alone," he whispered, his voice low but urgent. Ether and Paimon immediately snapped to attention. "What is it?" Ether asked, already gripping his sword. Paimon glanced around nervously. Rimuru scanned the surroundings, trying to pinpoint the exact location of the presence. "Someone's been following us," he muttered. "They're getting closer. But there's no sign of hostility yet." He looked at Ether and Paimon, giving them a quick nod. "Stay quiet about the fake god vessel for now. We don't know who's coming, but we need to be ready for anything." Ether nodded, and Paimon, though clearly nervous, also agreed. "Okay, got it," she whispered. Rimuru's hand instinctively moved towards his katana as he stood, preparing for whoever, or whatever, was coming. The quiet rustle of the grass in the night wind was the only sound as the group tensed, waiting for the mysterious figure to reveal themselves. Just then, a figure emerged from the shadows. The figure that emerged from the shadows had short ginger hair with dull blue eyes, framed by streaks of blonde that caught the dim light. He wore a red fatui mask pulled to the side, revealing his face, and a beaded earring with a red crystal dangled from his left ear. Despite the sharp blade held just inches from his face, the man remained unfazed. With a relaxed smile, he raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. "Whoa, whoa, comrade," the stranger said, his tone calm and casual. "I'm just here to talk, no need to get violent." Rimuru narrowed his eyes, his katana still firmly held in front of the man's face. "And what exactly do you want to talk about?" Rimuru's voice was low and cautious, clearly not trusting this new arrival. The man lowered his hands slightly and chuckled. "First, let's not get off on the wrong foot. The name's Chilled. Or Tartaglia, if you prefer." The moment Chilled introduced himself, Rimuru's eyes flared with recognition. "Chilled," he echoed, his voice now tinged with suspicion. "So, you're one of the Fatui harbingers." At the mention of the Fatui, Ether's grip on his sword tightened, and Paimon gasped, floating closer to Ether's shoulder. The air around the group grew tense as Ether shot a sharp glance at Chilled, fully aware of the danger that a Fatui harbinger represented. Chilled, noticing the shift in the atmosphere, merely shrugged, his grin not fading. "Well, yeah, that's me," he admitted without hesitation, showing no signs of intimidation or aggression. "But relax, I'm not here to fight. At least, not right now." He gave a wink, which only made Ether and Paimon more on edge. Rimuru, though, didn't lower his blade. His mind raced. Fatui harbingers were known to be powerful and unpredictable, but this one seemed more relaxed than threatening, at least for the moment. "What do you want, Chilled?" Rimuru asked, his tone sharp. "We're in no mood for games." Chilled clasped his hands together and let out a deep sigh, as if he was trying to explain something to a stubborn friend. "Come on, comrade. I get it, you don't trust me. Fair enough. But the truth is, I've been keeping an eye on you and your little crew since that whole mess at the terrace. Ningguang's got people running all over Liu looking for you, and the Millilith aren't too far behind. So, I figured I'd step in." Rimuru's grip on his katana tightened slightly. "Step in? Why?" Chilled's smile grew a little wider. "Because I think we could help each other out." Ether finally spoke up, his voice cold and steady. "And why should we trust you, a harbinger of the Fatui?" Chilled shrugged casually again. "I never said you had to trust me, comrade. But think about it. You've got the entire city of Liu on your tail, and I have resources that could get you out of this mess. All I'm asking for in return is a little cooperation. You scratch my back, I scratch yours." Rimuru glanced at Ether and Paimon. They both looked tense and ready for a fight, but there was no denying the truth in Chilled's words. Liu's forces were after them, and their options for escape were narrowing by the minute. Still, trusting a Fatui harbinger was a dangerous gamble. Rimuru finally lowered his blade, though his eyes remained locked on Chilled. "What kind of cooperation are we talking about?" Chilled's smile widened, sensing that he had piqued Rimuru's interest. "Let's just say I'm after something in Liu that might be related to what you're dealing with. The death, or should I say, the disappearance, of Rex Lapis is causing quite a stir, and I want to get to the bottom of it, just like you do." Paimon floated closer to Rimuru, whispering, "Rimuru, I don't like this, he's a Fatui." Can we really trust him? Rimuru remained silent for a moment, thinking carefully. He didn't trust Chilled, but at the same time, the Harbinger's offer of cooperation might be their best option for navigating the increasingly dangerous situation in Liu. They needed to figure out the truth behind Rex Lapis' death, and if Chilled had information or resources that could help, it might be worth considering, at least for now. Finally, Rimuru looked back at Chilled. All right, we'll hear you out, but if you try anything. Chilled raised his hands in mock surrender again, a playful glint in his eyes. Relax, comrade. I wouldn't dream of crossing you. Let's work together and see where this goes. As Chilled lowered his hands, the uneasy alliance was formed, though none of them, especially Rimuru, were under any illusion that this cooperation would be smooth or without complications. As Rimuru narrowed his eyes at Chilled, he asked bluntly, "So, how exactly are you going to help us?" Chilled grinned and reached into his pocket, pulling out a small, shining golden sigil. Rimuru watched as the light shimmered off its surface, intrigued. He turned inward, asking Seal to analyze the object, while outwardly asking Chilled, "What is this? And how is it supposed to help us?" Chilled twirled the sigil between his fingers before holding it out to Rimuru. "This, my friend, is your ticket out of this mess. If you head north from the harbor, then west from Gili Plains, eventually you'll reach a place known as Wei Karst. It's said to be the abode of the Adepti." Rimuru took the sigil and examined it as Ciel's analysis continued. "So, you're saying we should ask for help from the Adepti? They're revered figures in Liu, and most people would listen to them over Ningguang." Rimuru's voice was skeptical, but he couldn't deny the logic. Chilled smirked, snapping his fingers and pointing at Rimuru. "Bravo, comrade. You're sharper than I gave you credit for. Truly worthy of the title, Honorary Knight." At the mention of Honorary Knight, Rimuru's eyes sharpened. He looked directly at Chilled. "So, you must know how bad our relationship is with one of your colleagues." Chilled chuckled lightly, waving his hand dismissively. "Ah, yes. La Senora, right. I know all about that. But don't worry. I'm different. My goals don't always align with the rest of the Fatui." Rimuru watched him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I'll believe you for now. But don't give us a reason to regret it." With the sigil in hand and a plan forming, Rimuru turned to Ether and Paimon. "Let's go." He took both of their hands, and with a surge of wind, wings of pure energy burst from Rimuru's back, lifting them into the sky. The group soared towards the distant mountains of Wei Karst, the location of the Adepti, as instructed by Chilled. As they flew through the open skies, Paimon hovered close, her voice tense with both excitement and worry. "Do you think we can really trust him, Rimuru?" As Paimon asked whether they could trust Chilled, Rimuru turned toward her, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Of course not," he replied bluntly. Paimon frowned, clearly confused. "Then why did you take that sigil from him?" Rimuru smiled a bit at her question and then responded, "Do you remember the guy the first fought at Wangshu Inn?" Paimon nodded eagerly, and Ether's eyes widened, clearly recalling the intense fight. "I think he's an Adeptus." Both Ether and Paimon were visibly shocked. "What? And you defeated him?" Paimon exclaimed, almost in disbelief. Rimuru nodded calmly. "It wasn't easy, but that's not what matters now." He pulled out the shining sigil Chilled had given him, holding it up between his fingers as the light reflected off its surface. "I've already analyzed it," Rimuru said, glancing at the sigil as he explained. "From what I've gathered, seals like this were originally created during the Archon War. They were infused with adeptal energy, allowing people to draw upon divine power in desperate times. But this one's different." Both Ether and Paimon listened carefully as Rimuru continued. "The energy within it feels similar to the adeptal energy but not entirely the same I sensed from that Adeptus, and even from that fake corpse of Rex Lapis, but this is a little different." Ether furrowed his brow. "So, what does that mean?" Rimuru let out a small sigh. "It means that this seal is likely a replica, created by the Fatui somehow. They've found a way to mimic the power of the Adepti, and this sigil is part of their plan." Paimon gasped. "So Chilled is trying to trick us?" Rimuru shook his head. "Not exactly a trick. He gave it to us willingly, knowing that we'd likely use it. But I suspect his real goal is something bigger." Ether, finally catching on, asked, "So what do you think his intention is?" Rimuru's expression darkened as he glanced back at Ether while floating effortlessly with his wings of energy. It's obvious, it's the Gnosis. Ether's eyes widened in realization, and Paimon floated closer, worriedly asking, the Gnosis. You mean the divine power of the Archon? Rimuru nodded. Yes, it's what the Fatui are after. That's why Child's so involved in this mess. Ningguang, Rex Lapis, supposed death, the Adepti, it's all connected to the Fatui's pursuit of the Geo-Archon's Gnosis. He's trying to manipulate events to claim it for the Fatui. As Paimon floated next to Rimuru, she asked, but how will Child get to the Gnosis just by giving us this sigil? Rimuru, still gliding through the air, glanced at her and explained, I think Child has two goals in mind. First, he's testing whether this sigil works as well as a real one. He wants to see if it can fool the Adepti or even us. Second, he's trying to create a conflict between the Tianquan of Liu, Ningguang, and the Adepti. If they start clashing, it'll distract everyone, giving him enough time to steal the Gnosis from the fake body of the Geo-Archon. Paimon's eyes widened. Wait, so we're just going along with his plan. Why? Rimuru smirked slightly. Because his plan is doomed to fail. I know for a fact that the fake body of Rex Lapis doesn't contain the Gnosis. So, in the end, everything Child is working towards will be in vain. Paimon was still processing everything. Oh, so, we don't really have to worry about him then. Rimuru nodded. Exactly. He's chasing a ghost. Ether, who had been quietly listening, chimed in with another concern. But if this sigil is just a replica, won't the Adepti realize that? Won't they know it's fake? Rimuru shook his head. No, I don't think they will. The only reason I can tell the difference is because of my abilities. I can analyze things with precision beyond what anyone in this world is capable of, even though its full capabilities are restricted by that seal of mine. Despite that, its analyses are far more precise than what the Adepti or anyone else could achieve. Without that kind of insight, they won't be able to tell this sigil apart from the real deal. Paimon gasped. So, we've got an advantage over even the Adepti. Rimuru nodded. In this case, yes. That's why we can follow this path without worrying too much about what Child wants. In the end, we'll be one step ahead of him. Ether and Paimon exchanged glances, realizing just how complex the situation had become. While they were still flying toward Wayne-Karst, the gravity of the situation settled in, but knowing that Rimuru had an edge made them feel a bit more confident. All right, Ether said, let's go meet the Adepti and figure out our next move. To be continued.